Hello and welcome to the Imaging Wire Show. My name is Brian Casey and I'm managing editor of the Imaging Wire. Got a great episode for you today. Our topic is AI for fracture detection, and our guests are Dr. Alexandra Halaby and Taylor Bishop of the U.S. sales team at Gleamer. Alex and Taylor, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Brian. We appreciate it.
So let's start with introductions. Alex?
Yes. Hi, my name is Alexandra Halaby. Please call me Alex. I am the West Coast sales director. And before I actually worked in AI, I was a clinician in family medicine and urgent care throughout COVID. So you can imagine how crazy that was. I'm sure most of you lived it. And as someone who has been and seen and lived in medicine, I know that the AI revolution will alleviate a lot of pressures put on organizations and physicians alike. So X-ray AI and more specifically fracture detection AI is really where we start, Brian.
Perfect. Taylor, how about you?
Yeah, so my name is Taylor Bishop. I'm covering the East Coast here for Gleamer as well. Previous to Gleamer, I've spent about a decade in orthopedic trauma, much of that time being spent in the operating room at large trauma centers, seeing the lack of resources that some of these institutions have and the impact that AI can truly have. So I'm very excited to be here, part of Gleamer.
Great. Well, thanks both for being with us. So let's get started. So can we talk a little bit about what are some of the challenges that are faced by radiologists in detecting fractures?
Yeah, there are quite a few. It's not an easy job. I can attest to that. Detecting fractures is but a crucial task for radiologists and physicians alike. It comes with its own set of challenges. Some key pressures we are alleviating with BoneView today, one of which is error in diagnosis. No one wants to make a mistake, but we're all human and we do. So a missed or delayed fracture diagnosis can have serious implications, as you know, for the patient and the organization alike, whether that be litigation or otherwise. And physicians are currently vigilant at what they do, but the sheer volume of imaging studies can be extremely overwhelming, leading to potential errors. And that leads me into my second point. The demand of medical imaging is astronomical, especially in plain film, and it continues to rise. But this imaging volume is constantly superseded by the recruitment of radiologists, right? We just can't seem to have enough rads. We can't seem to have enough physicians actually practicing in clinical medicine today. And lastly, the complex cases of multi-fracture exams are extremely difficult, especially in complex anatomical regions. And this is really where we come in.
Perfect. And so, Taylor, we're probably talking in a lot of cases about, plain X-ray in the ER, right? And emergency physicians and radiologists are pretty time pressed to try to find these fractures.
Absolutely. This is a huge value add is really in the emergency room. We see it constantly. We hear it constantly. Emergency rooms across the country are overrun, overcrowded. The discharge times are always a point of interest when we speak to C-suites of how can I get this down? And we see a ton of value. Obviously, we push it as a radiology tool, but the real ultimate value is giving the ED more confidence to discharge, triage, do whatever they deem necessary with their MSK patients, and take some of that workload off of the radiologist lab so they can focus on CT, MR, more of their second line, more advanced imaging.
And for imaging centers and teleradiology centers, we really focus on turnaround time and increasing accuracy, being able to really focus their time on more complex cases by really reallocating their resources. And by resources, I mean for radiologists, it's mostly time consumption.
And it seems like another issue, in addition to the clinical outcomes and the malpractice issue, is the fact that in a lot of cases, these fractures are coming in to emergency off hours. There's residents that are looking at these images, and they probably could use some help. Is that kind of what you guys are seeing as well?
Absolutely. I would say that that's certainly the case. I think with this whole AI wave, we're kind of getting to that point where there's a lot of realization out in the field that this is a tool to aid and not a replacement. To your point, the volumes are just tremendously high. X-ray is still the first line of imaging. So, we hear that they are simple, and that's not certainly the issue. The issue is that by the time you read one, there's probably two behind you that you have to catch up on. So we're allowing them to kind of process through these plain films more efficiently.
So let's talk a little bit about Gleamer and some of the solutions that the company has developed to deal with some of these issues. So it's based in France, is that correct? Can you talk a little bit about the background of the firm?
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. So we were originated, as you mentioned, in Paris, France in 2017. So by our three co-founders, one of which had previous experience with healthcare startups, one of which being a practicing radiologist, and one of which being more of a data scientist, who got together and pretty much saw that the impact AI can have within healthcare. The best place to start is within radiology, and from their opinion is the low-hanging fruit, or that of plain films. So in that time, we've come to launch 4 products currently throughout Europe that are CE marked. One here in the US, FDA cleared, with a few more coming this year. And we're looking by end of this year to expand into CT, MR, and some other modalities. So it's really just the beginning for us here.
Perfect. So we're going to be focusing today on BoneView because that's the application that does have the FDA clearance. But what are some of the other ones? I guess you've got a chest AI as well.
We have several, actually. We have several innovative solutions. BoneView, as we're going to speak about today, is Gleamer's first clinical AI application designed for trauma X-ray interpretation. It really has become the global standard for pinpointing fractures. And secondly, the ChestView, our CAD-E software, projected to be released in May 2024. This is going to be an extremely exciting product, and this will be for thoracic pathologies on plain film. We will also bring bone metrics, so Cobb angle, also in 2024. And then, like Taylor mentioned, 2025 is going to be a big year for us as well.
Very good. So let's talk a little bit about BoneView. So can you tell me about, first, when did BoneView get cleared and how exactly does it work?
Absolutely. Yeah. So BoneView has been in Europe since about 2019 in practice. Here in the US, we first received FDA clearance in March of 2022. And then March of 2023, we received our pediatric clearance. So we're one of the only algorithms touching the pediatric population at this time, which is obviously crucial, especially when you're speaking on missed fractures, and the implications of a missed pediatric fracture have decades of consequences. So as mentioned, that's basically where our BoneView has come, and we're looking to expand into ChestView and a few others by mid-year.
Okay, very good. And so how does BoneView work?
Yeah, our algorithm can act as what we say a second set of eyes or a second reader alongside clinicians, whether that be radiologists, PAs, NPs, ED docs, family medicine physicians, and all subspecialties alike. It really provides an additional layer of analysis, either confirming the diagnosis or prompting a radiologist or other clinicians to reevaluate the image. And that's really the goal, is to work as a second analysis and to not interrupt the workflow whatsoever, because I know that the job is tough enough. So we don't need to add any additional clicks.
Well, so I guess you guys brought some images. Let's take a look.
Excellent.
Taylor, do you want to walk us through them?
Absolutely. So if you see on your left-hand side screen, we have an input of a hand here, probably a radiograph you've all seen countless times. An example on our right is what we perceive as our output. So once your images are set up into your packs, there's no additional clicks. As Alec mentioned, everything is happening behind the scenes, automatically being processed, and about 1 minute being turned around back into your packs to be viewed. So the right-hand side, you'll see that bounding box we're referring to, noting your point of interest. And we have 2 types of positives. So you see a solid line box here, which is stating a high confidence interval. And we also have a suspicion or a dotted line box, which is stating a medium confidence interval. So as mentioned, our focus really being to bring your eyes to the area of interest as quickly as possible to allow you to work through these mass amounts that you're seeing.
And like Taylor mentioned, workflow-wise, our results will pop up within the viewer workstation automatically. And from the original PACS acquisition, it should take no longer than 60 seconds. So it really will act extremely quickly. No one will know this is happening. And it really will be a mainstay in every modern health organization where imaging is concerned at one point.
Perfect. And then I guess we've got some shoulder images as well.
Absolutely. So this was another example that was sent to us a few months back by a user out in the field. And something we always like to be clear about is, look, X-ray is, it's the first line of imaging. It's not necessarily the most difficult, but time and volumes are the main concern. So this was one where if you give someone a few minutes, they'd probably be able to find the fracture that we're seeing here. But the fact of the matter is, few emergency rooms and radiologists across the country have those few minutes. So this is one that was sent to us and basically said, this was a nice catch. I may have missed this in the, ever expanding workload that's being asked upon me. So it just goes to show as kind of an over your shoulder second set of eyes, allow you to be more comfortable, more confident tracking your work through.
Perfect.
And it's funny, Brian, almost every single physician, I would say at least 92% of the people that I show this to are like, wow, I could have easily missed that, which is really reaffirming for us, because we say, okay, if we can make a change here we can make a huge impact on the healthcare system because of the sequelae of missed fractures.
Well, that kind of brings up a question of mine, which is how have clinicians responded to BoneView? Because Gleamer, you've had a number of clinical studies where you've been, assessing its performance and reactions of clinicians. How do they feel when they're working with it?
Yeah, we've actually had a widespread adoption thus far in a very short time frame. So we're very excited. We think it's fabulous. We have incredible feedback. And we've had instances where one of our customers turned it off for a few days to work on a technical project, and the physicians were actually up in arms asking when it was going to be turned back on. So that's really exciting for us to know we are changing the healthcare system in a very substantial, beneficial way. And to be honest, it's very rewarding and very humbling.
Certainly. And I think to Alex's point, something we hear often is from institutions that are using a few different AI tools, something they like about Gleamer is it's having the most hands-on impact just because of the sheer amount of volume of MSK plain films they're doing versus necessarily ICH screens, things of that sort. So while it may not have the big kind of emergent wow factor, it's certainly touching far more amount of patients.
Now, what have some of the studies found in terms of BoneView's impact on clinician performance in looking at fractures on X-rays?
Yeah, so we actually had a publication done up in Boston University, published in Radiology back in 2022, which we were awarded a Mark Willis Award, which kind of was a good path to show some of the validity to our concept, and found an increase in sensitivity of over 10% across the board, from emergency physicians to radiologists because we know the fact of the matter is it's not only radiologists reading these plain films, being asked more and more of emergency mid-level physicians. So we need to be able to kind of harness the impact across the board. So we see a large increase in sensitivity without any loss in specificity, and a reduction in reading time, helping kind of get through these films faster, get through discharging patients faster, kind of just start slowly but surely knocking down that workload.
It sounds like it's the best of both worlds. You're getting both an improvement in productivity and you're getting improvement in performance.
Yep, absolutely, 100%. I think going to the Gurmazi study, we really were able to prove that we help massively with multi-fracture exams, just the way our brains are wired, right? Our satisfaction bias. We see one fracture or two fracture and we move on, but there's no upper limit for BoneView in the amount of fractures it can detect. And that is an extremely important point because we've seen pediatrics, for example. I'm going to blame it on dad here. Dad steps on baby's hand while crawling and there's multi-fracture exams being indicated or fractures being found, and these need to be noted.
It's that satisfaction of search issue, right? I mean, you see a pathology and you're like, okay, well, I'm done here. But BoneView, doesn't have that.
Nope.
That issue. Now, is BoneView, is it best for certain kinds of radiologists? Like residents or younger physicians, or can more experienced physicians benefit from it as well?
I think we've seen, again, an incredible adoption across the board. I think it can help tenured radiologists, and I think it can help resident physicians or PAs or NPs alike. And we actually have a publication proving that no matter what specialty you're in, when using BoneView, you have an increase of, say, around 20 to 30% of sensitivity. And so these numbers have held true through our trials, through our customer base. And again, I want to say we have 30 clinical studies and 3 of which are published in Radiology. So right now, all of our facts have been accurate.
Yeah. And just to feed off of that, I think, even comparing attending to attending, something I hear from a lot of institutions is when we speak to the MSK radiologists, they're like, it's great, but this is what I was trained for. Like, I'm curious to see how this will help somebody who spends a majority of their time maybe doing mammography or something of that sort, but has to take call on a weekend or has to cover overnight plain films. Someone who's not specialized in MSK. If we can bring those thoracic radiologists up to an MSK level subspecialty, I think that's kind of the goal of standardizing that level of care across the board.
Perfect. Now, we mentioned that you got the clearance recently. What are some of your plans for rolling BoneView out in the U.S.?
Gosh, we're going to stay the course. We, again, are working with children's hospitals. We're working with teleradiology. We're working with imaging centers. and we have great reference sources. So we work with our third-party partners very, very closely. So the collaboration is what's really going to drive this product through and to infiltrate the U.S. market. And again, I think the pediatric and the adults clearance will help us gain stride very quickly.
And you're also working with some of the AI platform firms and getting BoneView onto their platforms?
Exactly, yeah. So it was always important to us to be kind of platform agnostic because we want to just make sure we can get this tool in as many users' hands as possible. So we're working with pretty much any major platform here in the US, from ADOC to Ferrum to Blackford to Nuance, and many more, DeepSea. There's a few others out there. So we're looking to be flexible with all our partnerships and then really trying to bring the value across the board because we know the impact it can have.
Well, it looks like our time's drawn to a close. I'd like to give you both a chance to maybe share some thoughts about where you see AI going, broadly in radiology, maybe with BoneView and Gleamer, but maybe on a bigger level as well. Taylor, could you go first and just, how do you see AI evolving and its role in radiology?
Oh, absolutely. So I still think AI is quite early here in the radiology world. I know it's been the topic of RSNA for years and years at this point, but still we see the adoption numbers and all that are still lower than probably some anticipated previously. I think what's going to be crucial for the adoption is getting to the point where we can have these diagnostic tools integrated with these impression or these dictation tools and really have that kind of pinnacle of efficiency. Because that's something we hear quite often. While they're quite excited by our diagnostic tools, they always want to know how we integrate with dictation and how we can eliminate some of that, because we like to say radiologists don't enjoy reading plain films, but even more so, they don't enjoy dictating on plain films. So how we can really take some of that load off of their plate and do it in a smart fashion. But I think just taking the radiologist point of views into account, always creating that open line of communication and hearing what they need. I think the companies that are doing the best job of listening to their customers and adapting based off feedback are going to be the ones in 5 years from now we're still discussing.
Yeah, great. Now, Alex, you bring kind of a unique perspective being a physician. How do you see AI helping physicians like you do their job in dealing with all these pressures that they have today?
That is an extremely loaded question, Brian. And I was telling you this before. I could go on and on. From a personal perspective, I worked in the urgent care during COVID. I was training PAs at the time as well, and we had an X-ray machine, and my rad tech wouldn't show up. So I'd be performing my own X-rays, and I'd be reading my own X-rays, and it'd be taking sometimes 24 to 48 hours to get an overread back. And I would go home and just pray that I didn't miss a fracture, potentially a scaphoid fracture on a pediatric patient, because of the implications that can occur and litigation, right? These are all of the things that physicians think about, not in the exact moment, but when you're reeling, when you're home playing, please, dear God, let them take their medication, or please let them be okay, or things like this. At least I did, but I find myself to be I was pretty good at it, I'd like to say. I'd like to think, at least. So I think that in that way, I would have been so happy to have this solution in my practice, since I did work with mid-level providers a lot, and they're fabulous. And they would ask me for overread. I'm like, I'm not a radiologist, but I'll do the best I can. If I could have a mini assistant sitting on my shoulder saying, hey, I think that there's something there, you should go back and read that, at least gives me the option to say, yes, I agree, or no, I don't agree. Most of the time, 99% of the time, I would most likely agree. But in a broader sense, I will try to make this brief, but AI isn't going anywhere. It's poised for continued growth and development. While it will undoubtedly evolve, it will never fade away. So as individuals and organizations, we face a pivotal choice right now, right here. This is going to be bold, but you either embrace it and ride the wave and progress, or you risk being left behind. And the early adopters stand to benefit totally significantly, especially from an organizational standpoint. AI offers unparalleled efficiency, cost savings, and, may I say, risk mitigation. And in other industries, they've already realized this. So why is healthcare so far behind? And again, in healthcare, it's a powerful tool for patient-centered care by optimizing your valuable time, organization's valuable time, physicians' valuable time. And as the demand of medicine persists, AI will become an essential ally. Medicine is not going to decrease its workload, and the imaging is certainly not decreasing its workload. So we either adopt or we don't, but I say let's adopt and let's adapt, because that's the way it's going. And our healthcare community's future really hinges on this forward-thinking approach. Again, much like other industries that have already recognized this many moon ago. So if we can deliver better patient outcomes, keep our fabulous physicians in medicine whilst not exhausting them, let's create organizational change. Let's save the future of medicine.
Love it. Great thoughts. Well, great discussion today. I'd like to thank Dr. Alexandra Halaby and Taylor Bishop of Gleamer for being with us.
Thank you so much. Totally appreciate your time.
Same
I love
here.
your show.
Thanks. Signing off for the ImageWire, my name is Brian Casey.